This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is Eli O'Sullivan-Kurtz, the Operations Specialist at Northland Neighborhoods Incorporated, and we are excited to welcome you to another virtual town hall meeting with the Kansas City, Missouri 1st District City Councilors Kevin O'Neill and Heather Hall. Just some quick notes before we get started. If you are listening in, please make sure you keep your microphone muted. That helps us to avoid audio feedback issues. And we also have a chat feed available if you have any questions for the counselors. All that we ask is that you put those in the chat and we will get them in the order that they come in as much as possible. No guarantees that we'll be able to answer everything, but we'll try to answer everything we can. So I'll go ahead at this point and pass this off to the city councilors. So Councilman O'Neill and Councilwoman Hall, welcome.
Hey, I just wanted to add that Councilman Fowler is also on from the 2nd District. So if you happen to have 2nd District questions, he can probably call somebody that knows the answer.
Delightful. Thanks for the added note there.
Oh, he's so funny. Well, good morning, everyone. We are so glad to have you. It looks like we have about 19 people on the call. And the goal of Northland office hours, for those of you who haven't joined us at the Woodneath Library on the 2nd Monday of the month, before, we set out to just have a free-flowing conversation. Sometimes people have questions. Sometimes they just have an opinion they want to raise. Sometimes they have a complaint. Sometimes they have a praise, which we do note those because they sometimes are few and far between. But what we do want to make sure that we don't miss out on the opportunity to continue to meet, even though it's in a different fashion. We still want you to know that we have your best interest at heart, that we still want you to work on answering your questions and taking suggestions. So this is a free-flowing type of a thing, except because we can't all talk at the same time. We are going to have Eli read the questions, and then Councilman O'Neill and I will do our very best to answer them. If we can't answer them, then we will get back to you. The benefit of this is we can see who's asking what questions, so we know how to get back to you to answer them. And we do welcome Councilman Fowler with us today. He I'm so glad you've joined us today, Dan, because we know that you have lots of things to offer, especially on the 2nd District side. And every time we do Northland office hours, I'm surprised how many people come from the 4th District to the 2nd District. So again, like we always say, the Northland really knows no bounds. We are all in this together, no matter which line of the city or the county or the districts that you're on. So, welcome, and we hope you're all doing well. And I will just say one exciting thing that happened that leads me into more hope for the future is that the Chiefs announced their fall schedule. So that's a little nugget of hope, right? Looking forward to the future in the fall. So welcome, everybody.
I will only make one quick comment, and that is that following up on what Councilmember O'Neill said, I do have my cell phone ready. So if you have 2nd District questions, I will be happy to call somebody who knows the answer.
Yes, and thank you very much, Councilman Fowler, for joining us this morning. We do have our first question in here from listener Steve Olson. He asks, what is keeping Vivian Road closed east of Oak Street?
East of Oak. Trying to think of I'm trying to think of where that is. East of Oak.
It's in front of the Anita Gorman Park.
Oh, okay. I didn't know Vivian Road was closed there.
Well, gosh, I just drove it last weekend. It was open. Do you mean just one lane is closed for a while? Can you give us some more specifics, Steve?
It may take a while for those specifics to come in here. I know that there's been some long-term development projects on Vivian Road, so it may be related to that.
Well, let us try and get some questions on that. The eastbound lanes are closed, he says. Okay. I don't have an answer right this moment, so give us some time. Let's do some investigating, and we'll get back to you.
All right. No other questions have come in just yet. So either Councilwoman Hall or Councilman O'Neill, do either one of you have just some announcements that you wanted to make this morning?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I just wanted to follow up on a question earlier this morning from Ellen Todd, who was wondering about testing at the McCrite facilities. We all know that's in the 4th district, but it's, as Heather said, it's part of the Northland. And I think there was 80 residents in there, and they tested all I think what they're saying is they've tested the 80 residents in the memory care unit where the outbreak occurred, and that the findings were positive or negative. So the outbreak wasn't as bad as they expected it could be. So that was good news. Now I'm waiting to hear back whether they've tested the other in the other facility, and I haven't got a text back on that. But that was my concern. Oh, let's see. No. So we haven't figured out yet if they've tested in both buildings, but I believe it was just in the memory care unit. So I'm waiting to hear back whether they've tested in the other unit, where the majority of people, I think they have like 200 people in that building and 80 in the memory care unit. So we're still working on that. Today is the day that the mayor will be announcing his restaurant guidelines for opening, which start on Friday, I believe. I was in Gladstone yesterday. I guess the Summit Grill is open. Margaritas is still doing curbside, and those are the only 2 restaurants I really ever go to in Gladstone. So that's all I know. Other than that, what do you have, Heather?
Great, thank you. Yeah, those are important things. We have spoken with a lot of folks over at McCrite. We are getting words on that. We'll have answers to that today. I think what I know for sure, back to Kevin's point, yes, the restaurants will be able to open on Friday. After the press conference today, the mayor will give some guidelines on what that opening looks like. And I think some restaurants are going to decide whether that's important to them to open. If those requirements don't allow them to be financially solvent, they may just stay as they are for a little bit longer until they can open more wholly. I do know some restaurants, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, since you've been to Summit, I've been told a lot of restaurants are creating this new system to slowly reopen, which is basically a reservation system. So they're having people make a reservation like you would at a, more fine dining specifically, and that way they can kind of guarantee how many people are in at a time, how many people they can serve, and that way they can slowly come back to a capacity that allows all their workers to still be paid, still have work, still make enough food to do that. But then on the flip side, because people are hoarding so much meat right now, a lot of restaurants are having a hard time getting their quantities of meat product to serve the meals that are on their menu. And so that's been an interesting situation. And, even Home Depot and Lowe's are out of upright freezers, and I don't know how much food people can eat, but anyway, they are stocking up, which is causing, then we're having all these adverse side effects because of people doing that. And I'm not sure how that's going to help the restaurant industry as they reopen. So that's something we're also working towards, but I just continue to say we have to keep promoting the places we're going, help support them in any way that we can. If we can order out. If you can't, at least talk good about them so other people will remember to order out if they can. And then the same thing with the other small businesses, slowly taking small, smart steps to get back to do what we do so we can reignite our economy, but also keep those businesses and the people employed. And those are things we're working on. I did reach out to Ralph Davis. I just left him a voice message to just see if he could maybe give us some ideas. If it's a public works project, I'm not sure, but I think it might be. So I reached out to him to see about Vivian Road. So Steve will get back to you as soon as we have more information on that one. Councilman Fowler, since you are our honored guest today, if you have some things you'd like to share, we would welcome them.
Well, certainly. The only thing I really have to share is that there are some restaurants, at least in Parkville, that opened Monday. I was in one. It's Irish restaurant in right in downtown Parkville, and it was open. I did notice that the wait staff were all wearing masks, and they seem to be practicing distancing fairly well. There was some discussion of a couple of others opening, but I haven't heard anything more on that. According to the media this morning, now don't take this as gospel because it's the media and this stuff kind of changes by the minute. I understand, however, that when the mayor makes his announcements this morning, there will not be a particular limit, say 10% or 25% on restaurants. Instead, they're going to go for to make sure the tables are spread out enough so that you can do social distancing and then do some pretty rigorous cleaning and so on. So I think that's opening. I don't know anything about Vivian Road either. I was by there the other day and it seemed to be open, but it's not my district, but it's over there.
Yeah, I think that the mayor sent out a press release. Apparently, I don't know if any of you got one that stated the the details of the opening of the restaurants. But I asked John to resend me because I didn't get one. But it's yeah. So I'm not sure. I'm sure we should get news of that soon. Let's see.
That's right.
I did stop by the Maple Woods Parkway project the other day. Yes, Friday, I think, and I'm glad to see it's moving along very quickly. They're expecting a 2021 fall of 2021 finish on that, and they're moving along quickly, and it's a good project. Looking forward to that to be done. And I did get a video from the Twin Creeks area. I don't know, somebody sent that out to me. I think the MD management, and it's boy, I'll tell you, if that development occurs, which we certainly hope it does, and with the passing of the Northland Soccer Park last week or 2 weeks ago, I think we have a really good shot at getting another first-rate shopping area in Second District. And I will say that for all of us homeowners in the Northland, the more business we create up here, the better our home values rise, and I think that's important to all of us. So I'm really excited about that, Dan. I mean, that's in your district, and that should be a great asset to the Northland. And
well,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say. Never mind. Go ahead.
I just want to give special thanks, Kevin, to you and Heather for working very, very hard to make that happen. That was certainly a Northland team effort to get that going. And we're waiting now for the contract to be finalized. I think a draft has already been sent to the Parks Department. I'm going to follow up on that later today. And I think the next thing we need to start looking at is an area around I-435. Because that's in your district. There's a lot of potential up there. And I think, once again, that's something that we all need to work together on to make a reality up there. I think this would be a great asset for the city as a whole.
Well, I think we call it the 587 project. And for those of you that keep having to add it together, it's 435 plus 152. And I have to take my pen and remember the project number every time. But it is a collaboration between EDC. I think MD Management owns property over there. I think even Star doesn't. I'm not sure. There's a bunch of Northland developers involved. And I'm really excited that could be. I mean, it's a great location, 435 and 152. What better visual can you have than a beautiful facility? We're talking about all sorts of things at that project, such as even a gaming center possibly that would attract the gamers and such, which hard for us to believe at my age, but that is a huge industry. Although, so that's coming around. I think that's our next focus.
Yeah, we sure have that. And we have Mayor David Slater to thank for the very creative name for that project. Hopefully, as the project goes along, I won't see this huge marquee that says 587. So I don't know exactly how we'll be able to top renaming it, but we'll think about it.
Yeah, no kidding.
So there are some
so
really
we've had
great
some.
projects, things that we have to do, things that we need to keep doing to build the economy. We haven't stopped working. You know, we were on, we did some radio interviews last week, and people are saying, oh, we're talking about really is COVID, COVID, COVID. And I said, well, you know, we are talking about the COVID because, of course, it's the most urgent and important thing right now. But the truth is, we're doing all sorts of things. We're still talking about the Barney Ellis Plaza Garage. We're still talking about the Northland Soccer Park. We're still talking about roads and bridges, you know, the Buck O'Neill Bridge. We've got a lot of things that are still actually happening. Well, it doesn't appear that we're doing anything because we're all sitting here in our homes talking to you, but work is still happening just like it is in your lives. We have a lot to do, and what we want to do is make sure we're helping you navigate through your life in the process of this, so you guys can keep being successful. And that's some stuff we need to do. It appears that maybe Marcus has received some information. Eli, do you want to lead us through that?
I do. I'm having some technical issues here with my chat feed. Okay, chat feed is back up so I can relate that information. Kevin, could you mute your microphone? We're getting that audio feedback from you here. Okay, so Marcus has said, let's see here, make sure I'm getting back to the beginning of it. Marcus has provided the, it looks like, identification number for a public works project. You can find that in the chat feed. And then Marcus has also said that from April 27, 2020 to May 27, 2020, may use Northeast Davidson Road from the east curb lane of southbound I-29 off-ramp to the south curb lane of Northeast Vivian Road for detour of Northeast Vivian Road closure. So there is a closure going on right now, and we have detour instructions available to folks. Marcus says again, our job is in the MoDOT ROW, but our detour route is in the KC-Mo ROW, and then connects game and construction to the project.
Okay, great. So that is in
other...
the MoDOT right away. Great, thank
yes.
you.
And
thank you, Marcus.
I know that we've had some other questions come in from folks, and I know, Heather, you had just mentioned about all the stuff that you're doing in addition to COVID news, but I did have some elaborating questions about something that you had said earlier about the reopen plan. So citizens, I think, are getting announcements about these reopen plans as they're becoming available, but we're getting some instructions about what to do. I'm kind of curious about what the process was to develop these reopen plans. So were city councilors involved? What constraints is the city facing as they develop them? That sort of thing.
Well, Eli, thank you for the relating the question. I'm not sure. I'm scrolled down on the chat now, so I don't know who asked that question. I will just be very polite in saying that during emergency orders through our charter, the mayor acts alone and makes those decisions. He can, of course, rely on anybody he wants to rely on, and I believe he's worked heavily with the health department and probably other first responder organizations to get the decisions that he has come to. But we are not privy to those decisions, nor do we have any weigh in prior to his decisions. I believe we generally get maybe an email a few minutes before it goes out to the general public, but it's not something that we are involved in. So when you see it, we see it. And generally what happens is then we're texting him or emailing him and saying, give us a clarification on X because some constituents have had a question on X. So that's kind of how it's worked. I believe things are fluid, and because of that, he has to work in more of a vacuum that way, because if he got 13 people together, I think all of us would never agree on exactly a path. So I think that's why the executive emergency orders are allowable in the charter of the city. Kevin, I don't know if you want to.
I know that we get a lot of questions about a lot of the decisions made at City Hall, and I kind of agree with Heather in the fact that the mayor really has no choice. He has to make quick decisions on the run. They happen in time. And I mean, I think even as a city council, we feel that in certain issues. They come at you pretty quick and you have to make quick decisions. I get disappointed sometimes when I hear, you know, at such a late date that we don't, you know, we hear a press conference and that's the first time we hear about it. I think we've expressed our concern about that, and I think he's trying to address it as best he can. So, you know, it's a difficult situation, and you know, frankly, we're all, you know, not all of us, but half of us are new to this job. Half of them, even the experienced ones that have been on a term, are finding this to be a completely new place to be in for a council person. So, you know, I think everybody needs to give the mayor some length on this, so that understanding the restraints and the quickness he has to make decision. Dan, anything?
Certainly, yeah. Well,
your thoughts, Dan?
Well, I agree with what Kevin and Heather just said. We don't get a say in this, and to a degree that may be good, because it kind of takes some of the anxiety off of us. On the other hand, I think we would like to be consulted occasionally, but any way you cut it, these are very, very difficult decisions, and you have to take a lot of factors into consideration, both the economic factors, such as what does the close down do our economy, does to our tax receipts as far as the city goes, and more importantly, does to the people of our city. Before this happened, we had unbridled prosperity in terms of employment. Now we've got something bordering on the Great Depression. It's not a good scenario. On the other hand, what does the spread of disease do to you? That is potentially probably more devastating in a short-term effect. So there's a lot of balancing consideration that goes on, and frankly, I applaud Quentin for addressing them in the way he has. We have generally seen a low incidence in Kansas City, and I think part of the reason for that is that we have the mayor moved quickly and aggressively to try to stem the tide of it. So we're doing fairly well. I'm a little bit apprehensive about a reopening. On the other hand, it has to happen at some point. I just hope that we can do it in a responsible way. I would encourage people that if you go patronize a restaurant or anywhere as far as that goes, to follow the guideline. If you're going to be there for more than 10 minutes, leave a card, leave something so that they know how to get you. So if there's an outbreak, they can do contact testing or tracing. That's very, very important to isolate outbreaks, to keep people from, to keep the disease from spreading, and to get it, you know, stopped as quickly as possible, and to continue to be responsible in how we approach it. Certainly wear a face mask if you go out. I certainly do. And it's an inconvenience. I'm the first to admit it. I'm still trying to come to grips with how you wear a face mask and be able to see at the same time, because it invariably fogs my glasses. So that's an inconvenience we're going to have to put up with for a while, but I think it's worth it in the long run. Certainly along those lines, I would not advocate driving while wearing a face mask. That fog could be a little bit of a problem there. So anyway, but please keep those factors in mind. And if you do go out, you know, if you don't have to, please don't. If you're of my age or Kevin's age, over 60, be very, very careful. Yeah, we got to go out every once in a while, but let's do it in a responsible fashion, and try to get things back on track as quickly but as carefully and responsibly as we can.
great. Well, thanks to all three of you for that answer. I know it covered a lot of range there, and I think all of that information was really important. Councilman Fowler, just some trivia for you. I have been told that the reason why glasses fog up when you're wearing a mask is because the temperature of the glass doesn't match the temperature of your breath. And so I've heard that if you run the lenses under warm water before you put your mask on, it can help to minimize that fog. I have had limited results myself when I've tried it, but it might work a little better for you. Who knows?
That
Okay.
works for about 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. And then the outside
Cool
temperature
down,
starts
you got
to
a problem.
weigh in. Sure. Okay, so let's move on.
See,
with
Dan,
some-
I would have thought you'd be used to operating in a fog.
Between my ears, not in front of my eyes, yes. Now let's see. One cure I heard was to clean your lenses with shaving cream. That doesn't work. Another one, the medical profession has gotten onto this a long time ago. Rinse your glasses off. Use warm soapy water to clean them. Rinse them off again. Then dry them with a cotton jersey, such as a T-shirt or a microfiber lens cleaner. Yeah, that didn't work so good either. I have a mask that's got a little bit of foam underneath the top part of it, along with a metal piece in it that you can form it. That seems to work the best.
Understood. Well, thank you very much. So we've got some additional questions here. I'm going to go ahead and move along. This next question comes in from Marty S., and he asks, please share any details you have on recent shootings over in Brighton.
I did, Marty, call the Scott Simons, our police, what do you call it? He's our liaison between the police department and
Community interaction officer.
What is it? Community interaction officer. It was I believe it was a drive-by shooting. If I'm correct, they shot into the house, and they don't have any suspects at this point, but I'd be the last to know. So that's all I know. Have you heard anything, Heather?
Understood.
Nope, that's all I think we can do. I think if Brian Keeney gets on, Officer Keeney might be able to give us some information, or he can share it at the next First District problem solving.
Yeah, I did want to add. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out that I don't believe Bill has signed in today. I don't see his name listed there.
I did want to note 2 or 3 things. I wanted to give out some thanks on 2 different things, especially going on in the Northland. And I might add that I do think that this Northland Council has been operating together very successfully, and we have like-minded results, and we're all working tirelessly to make sure that the Northland isn't forgotten in city council meetings. I do want to put a big shout out to Keith Nelson and Dick Davis for all the work they've done on the Francis Shoto Fountain. If you haven't been by there yet off of Shoto, it's coming along really, really nicely. And so if you get a chance, go by there. And to my colleague, Councilwoman Heather Hall, the work she's done on the police memorial is fantastic. If you get a chance to go up there by Shoal Creek Park and see what they've done up there, there's lots of progress taking place despite all the things going around us. So I do think those are 2 big Northland projects that are really important for the area. And also, I want to note, we are having a census this year. We are doing a census, and hopefully everybody's, generally the people that attend these are the first people to sign up for things like that. But it is important to note. When I first started running for office, I was told, oh, don't worry, by the 2021 census, we're going to have half the population, and all of a sudden we're going to have 3 districts up north, and that'll make us equal. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the growth, while as fast as has been up north, I think we're going to be around 42 to 43%. That would be my guess. which is going to throw some of the 4th district probably further north. But it is my guess that we're not quite there. But the next census, not that I'll care, but the next census should be when others take office. They should have the luxury of being part of 50% of Kansas City, Missouri, which will give a lot more say to the Northland. And I'll just stop there.
Well, thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank
Kevin.
you.
We're grateful that we do have a good team. I feel like we're really all working well together, and I think a large part that has to do with how well you all tell us what's important to you. Because if we don't know what's important to Marty or Steve or Dave or I think I even see Mark back there behind my mute button, it's vitally important that we listen to what is important to you. And if we're not listening, then we're not doing what you like, and it doesn't end up working out. So we'll continue to have these meetings, and you continue to tell us what you think, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we will respond as best that we can. And right now I see we already have 26 people on the call, which I think is wonderful. Thank you so much. One more thing I will respond to. I don't have a lot of information yet, because now that we're dealing with the financial shortfall that we are assuming COVID will do, one thing we have been working on, but I'm afraid it's going to be halted for a while, but maybe I'm speaking too soon, and that is the Station 40 renovation situation. We have budgeted money. We have received funding, not only from what we're doing and what we've been working on, but also with some federal grants that the fire department's been working on. So Station 40 is still a priority. It is important that we get that up and running in a safe, healthy way, so that the firefighters and EMS workers who live out of there can breathe healthy while they're there. And so we are working on that. It is ever present in our mind. It is not something that's on the back burner by any stretch of the means, but we just need to figure out how to pay for it and how to get it done well. So progress is still working forward. We just can't give you an answer today on we're going to start rehabbing it tomorrow, because we don't know that just yet. And 3 things that the 3 of us anyway, I'll tell you for sure, have sent an email to the acting city manager, Ernest Rouse, and we've asked for business sessions coming up in the near future, meaning like this week, next week, and next week, on some very important topics. The first one is, where are we on the status of the search for a new city manager? We don't know, and we haven't heard, but that's been going on for a long time, and we should have heard by now where their whittled down of contenders is, and we haven't heard that. So we've asked for an update on that in a business session. The second thing we've asked for is, what does it look like with the negative impact of COVID on going forward, Q2, Q3 in our budget, and what does that look like for how we spend our money? So we've asked for the question on that. A third thing we've asked for an update on is the owner's rep for the KCI project. What does exactly the owner's rep do? Who do they respond to, and how are they working to spend the money that we have paid them, or we are allocating to pay them, which is roughly, correct me if I'm wrong, about $40 million. Not questioning what they're doing, we just don't know. I haven't heard an update recently, so I'd like to know that. And then there was another item, then the fourth item, which I think is vitally important, is the update on the jail. Where are we on the short-term and the long-term status of a jail situation? Because it's financially strapping us to continue to shuttle our inmates to Vernon and Johnson County, and that's costing us so much money. Not only money, but the safety of our officers from the municipal court who are driving people to and from. That's one of the least safe ways to transport someone who is, convicted of a crime at this point to and from in a van with law enforcement. That's unsafe, and we need to figure out how to work those things out. So those are requests that we have made to the mayor and the acting city manager to give us updates in upcoming business sessions. So we're still waiting to hear from that, and we will keep you posted when we know more of that. Thanks, Eli.
Certainly, yeah. So quick follow-up question here before we move on to the others. This is going back to the Chateau Fountain. Richard Hertig asks, when is the opening of the Chateau Fountain? There's no water in it to date.
Okay, I'll just say first, It's a Francois Chateau Memorial Fountain, but it's going in phases. And I know maybe with Mark on the call, he might want to share some more actual data with us before I speak anymore, now that I see him on.
Well, has everybody gone by and seen what's there today? I think with the monument and the statues on top. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. That's the first phase, and that's not 100% complete. Still got a little bit of work to do around it, and we may have a little event to kind of celebrate that aspect of it. But the second phase is another bluff. What you see now is that rock outcropping, which would be considered to be a bluff. There'll be a second bluff and then a waterfall associated with that. Right now, and kind of keeping track of the funds on it, I know that through the efforts of the City Council in both District 1, District 2, and 4, I believe it is, there was $175,000 made available from, I think, the 275, excuse me, 275 between those three districts. And then we also have $100,000 that's moving through the process now through the TIF Commission. Dave, I know you, I think, had that your agenda last Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And so that brings you up to 375. So that's moving into the second phase. We still have some engineering to do on that, of course. We're working with KCP&L or Evergy, I guess, to get the power over there. I traded some emails over the weekend with folks in water services to get a water line service over there. So it's moving. The quick answer is when, not sure. I mean, everybody's talked about trying to get something done in 2021. So we're at least a year away, but there is still more money to raise to make that happen.
Just to follow up on that, I had a conversation with Dick Davis the other night because I was curious. I know we still have to get more money, but I didn't know how much more. And it's kind of hard to calculate because there have been some vendors, I think Burns and McDonnell Engineers and also J.E. Dunn, who have agreed to do some things at cost, which reduces the overall amount that's needed to be raised. But I asked him to come up with a figure to figure out how far we are. The original goal was $1.6 million, which included about $300,000 for a eventual replacement and maintenance fund. But we don't know. I don't know at this point how much more needs to be raised. So they're in the process of trying to determine that. I think once we figure out how much more we got to raise and then get to that point, then I think you can start seeing some movement on the water features.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that answer. I've got a few more questions here that have come in, so I'm going to try and move through these in the time that's left available to us. First of all, from Henry Rankin, speeding and traffic on Northeastern Avenue has become excessive. Would it be possible to install a speed signal there?
Henry, that's a question we will be able to ask Wei Sun, and he can help us do a traffic study and see if we need to do that. I don't have an answer right this time unless somebody else does.
This is Officer Keeney, your community interaction officer. That's probably one of the #1 complaints we're getting throughout the whole city, especially more so than recently with the amount of speeding going on throughout our neighborhoods or highways. And I'm sure many of you have been listening to a lot of the radio and sometimes even the news reports from our traffic enforcement units that we've had excessive speeds all the way up to 130 miles per hour along our highways. This past weekend, because of the fact that we've had also reports of illegal drag racing throughout the city and including in the Northland, one in particular that we've had is over off of 210 highway. And we've been working on doing some street calming in that area. One of the things I want to make sure that everybody in our communities are doing is that they're taking advantage of not just calling in 311 and making the complaint on the speeding, but also making sure they're using the online system by putting those online complaints as well. And if you don't know how to do that, if you just type into your search engine, KCPD traffic complaints, you can actually have it pop up for you and you can click on it. It's really easy. It tells you how it's a walkthrough, fill in the blanks, and then you submit it. And we have a sergeant that's down our traffic enforcement unit that reads of all those and then hands them out to our prospective 5 traffic unit squads. I also tell people to make sure when you make those complaints, ask to be contacted. because you want to know what the results are. Please be it's very important to put down the times in which the speeding has happened. Now, one other thing that we get a lot of times is that we have maybe 3 or 4 cars that are doing it in a neighborhood, and you know it's the same cars. Put that in that complaint as well. If you know where those cars are located, or you might know where they live in your neighborhood, go ahead and contact myself or Officer Jones, your community interaction officer, and we can go ahead and send a compliance letter of abatement to the actual address and letting them know that we are now investigating them, and we're going to forward that complaint over to the traffic unit, and that not only fines could be accumulated, but we also are going to be doing a little bit more proactive work within the neighborhood. Those are some of the things we can look at also for the enforcement side of it. And of course, we'll keep on top of it as best as possible.
Thank you very much, Officer Keeney, and welcome to the call. We had another question that might be something you could help us out with. This was asked earlier by Marty S. Please share any details you have on recent shootings over in Brighton. And there were some clarifying questions in the chat. And listener Amy Justice said that she believes it may be a shooting off of Northeast 57th Street in the 1st District this past Friday evening. Do you know much about that, Officer Keeney?
It was in Ravenwood, Bill.
Maybe
Officer
Officer
Keeney, if you're
Keeney.
talking, you may be muted, yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Officer Keeney. I accidentally hung up on that. Did someone have a question?
Yes, yeah. There was a question that came in from Marty S. earlier about shootings that happened in Brighton recently. And through some clarifying questions, we found out that it may be in Ravenwood, and it may be a shooting that happened this past Friday off of Northeast 57th Street in the 1st District.
I'm going to go ahead and let my partner, Officer Jones, he's on this call as well, go ahead and talk about that.
Okay, so basically, it's a deal where victims, suspects are familiar with one another. It is still under investigation. Suspect's been identified. I was actually researching it when the question came up. I'm not sure if the suspect is in custody yet or not.
So sadly to say that majority of the shootings that we've had up in the Northland, and within COVID, we've now had 2. One incident that did happen, which was right behind off of Cherry in an apartment complex. The individual was carrying a pretty large log and was making all kinds of noise and just acting crazy in that parking lot. The person was walking through the parking lot. The guy started going towards him, waving this object, this stick, like almost like a wooden large stick at him. And the guy stood his ground, told the guy to back down. He backed up and he fired on the individual. And that was our first actual homicide that we had. Our second homicide, which Officer Jones just talked about, it was very concerning. We have individuals showing up at a house, opening fires into the house, an individual being struck. And again, it's one of those things where people knew each other. And we were able to figure out who they were pretty quickly, identify the suspects, and go after them. We need to probably do a little bit more educating within our communities about making sure that if they do have people that might be having issues or problems with one another, that conflict resolution is the better solution. So we've kind of started partnering up with our school districts to talk to some of those in case they are juvenile related. But so far the incidents have been very isolated. They've been one of those ones that's going to be hard to prevent when tempers do rise or they get upset. And we're seeing that throughout our city with the conflict resolution.
Thank you very much, officers, for that. I know we're coming into the final quarter of our time here, so I want to try and get to these other 3 questions that we've got. This first one is from Richard Hertig, and it may actually be a better question for Councilman Fowler over in the 2nd District, but Richard asks, the recent efforts for increased transparency for the airport contracts aren't a bad thing, but should the initiatives have been implemented from the start? Will the efforts delay the construction?
First of all, no, I don't think the efforts will delay the construction. The data that's been requested is generally available anyway. Should they have been implemented from the start? I don't know. I think we are getting, I say we, the Transportation Infrastructure Committee is getting monthly updates on whether hiring goals are being met or not. I voted for the resolution requesting the information be given to that committee. But was it necessary? I really don't think it was. I think it was kind of surplusage. Any of us probably could have gotten the same information just by calling Pat Klein and requesting it. So, more information is always better. Whether this is that much better, I don't know. It seems to me that from the data that I've seen as recently as last week, that the developers were not totally where they wanted to be, but they were pretty close. And the amount of work that has been done so far is very, very limited, and it won't really start to gain a lot of steam until later this year. And at that point, I think we'll see a lot more women and minority participation, both in terms of subcontractors and workforce. But it seems to me that it was really not all that big of a deal to have it. So should we have had it in the first place? Well, more information is always better. Is it necessary? I don't know. We're getting monthly updates now. So I was not really all that concerned about it. I'm still not, but it will not slow the progress of the airport at all, because the information was requested was already given to the chairman of the Transportation Operations Committee just about the same time we were passing the resolution.
Thank you, Councilman Fowler. And Kevin, or Councilman O'Neill, sorry, did you have a follow-up for that?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree. I agree with Dan. I'm on the Transportation Committee, and I'm not quite sure what the intent of that ordinance was. I know that one of the things I was concerned about was we don't really have a good relationship with the owner's rep over there, only because we've never really forged one. We are working to get him more involved in giving us information rather than giving it to Edgemore and giving it to the aviation department and then forwarding it on to us. Since we pay them $40 million, we have a contract with that organizer, or that group, for $40 million over the course of this airport, and we need them to be more responsive to us. And I thought that's where the ordinance should have. That ordinance doesn't really mean anything if we don't have them telling us the truth. And apparently there's some thought that maybe that we're not getting the truth. There's several numbers out there. It's hard to. HRD sometimes has numbers that don't reflect the same numbers as Edgemore, and it's based on how they're corralling those numbers and putting them in. Some are on dollars, some are on contracts signed, some are on contracts paid. So we've done a pretty good job of getting that narrowed down to where we understand what numbers are important, and that's what we're getting. And so eventually, hopefully, since we just start going vertical in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the numbers go from maybe 200 people on the ground to 1,500 on the ground in the next 2 to 3 months. And that's going to make a big impact on the WB and MBE numbers. That's a long way of getting around to a short answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman O'Neill and Councilman Fowler, for that information. Just to follow up on the question about the shooting earlier, Community Interaction Officer Lance Lenz elaborates that the shooting on Northeast 57th Street was a homicide. It's currently under investigation, assigned to Sergeant Hines' squad, and there is no suspect information for that shooting at this time. We also have what I think is a follow-up to a question that was asked last week. This was sent to me by Marcus Smith, but it's from Keith Nelson originally. Keith says, last week I asked about the project on Searcy Creek. The parkway is only being used to stage the sewer lines that they will be pushing under the Missouri River. elaborates, "This is an amazing process. They're putting these huge pipes together, starting at Russell Road and placing them on rollers in preparation to push and pull these lines under the river. One southbound lane closed for the staging. The lines will be going underground east of the Buckeye Sewage Facility. Big and unusual project without much notice." Like I said, I think that's mostly a comment that follows up on something that was asked last week. But for any of our council people who are here, do you have anything that you'd like to say to elaborate on that, the project on Searcy Creek?
I will say I thank you, Keith, because that sounds like a fascinating project. I was going to plan on going by there this afternoon because somebody else had mentioned that to me and how amazing a project it is. So I was a couple weeks ago. I went down to the Santa Fe pump station down in I can't remember what area that's in the West Bottoms, and it's fascinating to see how they work on I think it was 132-inch pipe or something of that. It was huge, and the work that goes into that and the money that it takes to just replace that. Those are the things that I think that City Hall workers, people that work for City Hall, don't get credit for, the ingenuity and the amazing work that goes on underneath the city.
Certainly, yeah, it's always a big endeavor, I'm sure. So last question that we've had submitted so far is from Richard Hertig. Asks for a status update on revenue shortfalls and increases in liabilities, and says, as elaboration, no sales tax will increase the costs for power and light, for example.
I think Heather is on the finance committee, and I know that our finance director sent out an update on our finances. You might, if you don't mind addressing that, Heather, I mean, you're closer to that.
So actually, Richard, thank you for the request and the information. You know, that's something that Tammy Queen, our director of finance, she sent out a presentation. We were actually supposed to get that presentation in business session last Thursday, but it got canceled. So we didn't get to hear her report, but we did get to have a hard copy electronically sent to us to talk about what her report was going to be about. So what I'm going to say to you, Richard, is I don't have any hard and fast numbers today, but I will. Unfortunately, Councilman Shields canceled our finance committee meeting for this week, so we don't have a finance committee meeting this week. My hope is that we will hear an update in our business session on the finance shortfall and what that looks like. Something that Councilman Fowler, O'Neill, and myself met with Commissioner Nolte recently to talk about how Clay County's funds are going to come to Kansas City for the COVID response to help with the shortfalls that are COVID related. And so we're working on a way where we can find out how the funding from Clay County that is designated or allocated for KCMO can be used to help the folks in the Northland in our budget shortfall areas that are related to COVID, whether we're doing testing or whether we're helping feed, our youth, or helping our senior centers, or helping some small businesses get out of financial trouble during this time. Whatever those things are that they are COVID related will be able to be put back into our budget to help with the budget shortfall, first of all. So I can answer that right now. I cannot answer the part about the increasing costs on the power and light, for example, at this time, but I would think, and Marcus and Diana, as we're planning our June 1st district problem solving, I believe Carol Mackin is on as a speaker from Evergy, which is KCP&L. And I think that's a really important question that we ask them. What does that cost? How, and maybe she doesn't know the answer yet, but if we could, Marcus and Diana, reach out to her and say, please be prepared to give us some answers on what does that look like? Are we going to have increased bills in our energy, whether it's power or gas, and of course our water bills? What is that going to look like going forward? And those are important questions. And Richard, I don't have a specific answer, but what I promise you is that I will get an answer for that question from our finance director, because the three of us have asked her to give us an update on what does it look like and what are those numbers going to tell us, because are we going to have to start cutting some of our services out of our departments? We don't know the answer to that yet, because we don't know right now We assume it's going to be about a 5% across the board departmental shortfall, and 5% over the last 2 months. What does 5% look like? So we need to really be smart about that.
I might add on that meeting we had with the Clay County, there was an article that talked about how we're supposed to get, we are 54% of Clay County. And so in reality, based on the formula, we're supposed to get about 15.8 million, 15.6 million, something like that, but we're only getting about 11 million. And the reason is Clay County decided to take a portion of that before at the gross dollars and take out money to put into the health department and to their school districts. And then so our 54% now is based on numbers less what they gave to the health department. And so because of that, we only are getting 11 million or so. And since we're getting the amount under the required funding, the Clay County is responsible for that money. And that's why we have to sign off on that, or else we're going to be going to Clay County for every receipt we have related to the COVID-19 issue. So we are really working hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. And there's nothing worse that I can think of having to go to Gino and Luann Ridgeway ask for money. So we are working on getting that done separately.
Certainly. Sort of a follow-up question about the comment from Keith Nelson about the project on Searcy Creek really quickly. Steve Olson asks, at a future meeting, could we have someone from the water department speak about that new pipe under the river? It sounds fascinating. And then we had some final comments come in here as well. I'm just sorting through them now to see if any of them are really relevant for the discussion here. It says, Marcus Smith asks, Kirk, can you have someone, maybe Terry Leeds, to talk about the water bill increase?
I can pass that message on to him. And then I don't know a lot about the sewer main going under the river, but I do know it's essentially an oversized directional drill, which is similar to what you see going on all over town, where say, for instance, the gas company has a small bore machine that have those metal pipes on. They'll drill down wherever they need to go underground, and it's got a directional head on it, so it can drill to where it needs to go. And then on the other end, they attach the 2 or 3 inch plastic pipe, and then that machine pulls it back through underground. And this process is real similar, except it's just a lot larger pipe. I believe it's they're doing 2 24-inch plastic pipes, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a similar process, just a supersized process, and it's to replace some existing old aged infrastructure sewer mains under the river. Hopefully that helps, and then hopefully we can get somebody from the sewer side to give a better explanation of it at a future meeting. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We do have one last question here that came in from Richard Hertig. Would it be possible for the city to turn the street lights off to cut the city budget during this time?
Well, I guess I would ask you a couple of questions. What time of day do you want us to turn them off? And how does that work with our public safety issues with our law enforcement officers? So I think I see where you're going with it, Richard, but I'm not sure I can say yes or no to that today. We'd have to have a couple other people who are smarter than us answer those questions with the public safety issue.
Makes sense. Thank you for that, Heather. All right, so I think that's all the questions that we have in for today. I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to the counselors one last time for any final notes or messages they'd like to give. But once again, this is Eli O'Sullivan Kurtz with Northland Neighborhoods Incorporated. We have organized this meeting, and I'm acting as the moderator. So thank you very much to all 3 of the counselors who are here today. We appreciate you being available to your constituents.
Heather, why don't you lead off? And
Okay. Well, first, I just want to say thank you. We've had a roughly 24 to 26 people on this call the whole day. This is important stuff, and what you're asking is vitally important. I want to say thank you to Eli, Deb, the whole N&I team. Even in this time, you still host our meetings, even when we're not actually at your place. So thank you for doing that. Secondly, I want to thank Diana and Amy and Marcus for working while we've been on this call. They've already been sending emails to all the departments and getting answers to all the questions you guys have been asking us. So they are still working, still asking those questions, and thank you very much. That makes a huge difference. It makes Kevin and Dan and I's life so much better and easier so that we can do a better job serving everybody. So thank you for that. And for everybody who got on the call, your questions that you asked were amazing. And those of you who were on the call who were able to offer answers that we couldn't offer, thank you. That's vitally important. We're going to keep working together, and hopefully we'd love to see you all in person next month. Well, we're going to continue to talk about that and see what that's going to look like. But thank you very much. And Kevin, I'll let you finish it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple things. Just remember June 2nd. That's there's an election actually on June 2nd. I don't know all the things that are on there, but I think there are two very important. One is the fire sales tax. I think very important for our city, especially with the COVID-19 issues. I think that's important, and I believe Clay County has their issue of forming a new government statute or changing the charter group they're putting together, and that's going to be a request on the June 2nd election. And, I do want everybody to know Diana is my legislative aide, and I just want you to know that she is wonderful. And if you have any questions, I know that her and Marcus and Amy are all tuned into this, and they are so good at what they do. Just please don't hesitate on calling them and giving them an opportunity to know what your issue is. And other than that, I thank you all for coming, and I'll go over to Councilman Fowler and see if he has anything to say.
Just briefly, I want to thank you for allowing me to participate this morning. A couple of reasons. Number one, I really wanted to hear what First District concerns are, but on May 30th, we're having another Donuts with Dan that will be done in this format. And so Amy and I are both on board to see how it works, so we know what we need to do then. It will actually be Donuts with Dan, but bring your own donuts. Obviously, we won't be able to provide them to you, but I appreciate your willingness to let me participate. I have to echo the comments about Amy, Diana, and Marcus. They work hand in glove with each other, and Heather and I are on the board of directors of the National League of Cities, and we go to the meetings and they find out that we have council aides, and every one of them is jealous of us for having that. And it didn't take long for the staff people at National League of Cities to learn, at least in my case, that if you want to get to me, you go to Amy first. If you want me to remember something, you tell to Amy. And they finally got accustomed to that. So that's how things work. So kudos to them for the excellent work that they do. But thank you all again for letting me horn in on you this morning.
All right. Well,
Certainly,
thank you,
and once
everybody.
again.
Oh, sorry, Eli.
Oh no, I was just going to say what I think you're about to say. So why don't you go ahead and take it?
I was just going to say thank you to everybody, and really Eli and Northland Neighborhoods, thank you so much for putting all this together for us. So have a great week, everybody.
Yes, everyone take care and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Right. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.